Hello, and welcome to Recap Land. This story is about a future where stupid humans overpopulated the world, leading to a hilarious and complicated dystopia. But things are about to change when an average man from the past wakes up 500 years later as the smartest man alive. And remember, spoilers ahead. The year is 2005. We see a smart couple and a stupid couple who are being used to show differences in their IQ and birth rates. While the smart couple waited to the point where the husband died from a heart attack, their family tree fell down to one, while the other family tree grew endlessly as they had multiple kids with several partners. Elsewhere, Joe Bowers, a soldier, is sitting in a boring office. Keller walks up to him and tells Joe that he's selected for a top-secret military project. But Joe is sad because he likes this job where nobody expects anything of him. But Keller tells him that this order is from the top and can't be changed. Next, we see a high-ranking officer, Collins, debriefing other officers on Joe, who was chosen not because he is the best, but actually because he's the most average person they could find. And he has no family to ask questions. A woman called Rita is also selected for this experiment, but they had to outsource her from the streets. They made a deal with her pimp, who is known as Upgrade, with a double D for an extra dose of pimping. Collins shows how he built trust with the pimp, but the other officers couldn't handle the heat, so Collins had to get back to the serious stuff. Later, Joe and Rita are waiting for their test reports when Joe says hello, and asks Rita what she does. She's from the streets, but doesn't reveal it, and says she's an artist. Both of them are eventually taken to their hibernation pods. Rita freaks out a bit, but Joe tells her it's been tested and there's no danger, which makes her feel at ease. Collins tells them they'll be woken up in exactly 1 year. But soon after, Collins is arrested for entering the pimping game with Upgrade. His building is destroyed, where Rita and Joe get buried under the rubble. As the years pass, we see the average global IQ dropping as people obsess even more over boners and hair treatments. Soon, 500 years have passed, and we see mountains of garbage everywhere. On one of these, a truck is emptying out its trash, but soon a massive avalanche begins. Rita and Joe's pods get sucked into it, which heads towards the city, and one is launched into Frito's house. But Frito is too busy watching a show called Ow My Balls. Soon Joe wakes up from the pod and stumbles in confusion. Joe asks the stranger where he is, and how long he's been asleep for. When Joe keeps disturbing Frito, he gets tossed out the same window he entered from. Outside, Joe sees unfamiliar signs around. He has no clue what happened. He speaks to some people who can't understand his English, but he can understand them. The confused group calls him stupid and he gets chased away. Joe enters a hospital for help. Here, a confused lady presses one of the buttons and tells him where to go. On the way, he tries drinking from a dispenser, but he's shocked when it's Brawndo instead of water. A man tells him water is only found in toilet bowls because people only drink the green liquid now. At the scanning bay, a man gives Joe 3 scanners to put in his holes, but accidentally mixes up the butt scanner with another scanner, and tells him to shove them in again, which he reluctantly does. Then he chugs some Brawndo to cleanse his palate. Doctor says his problem is talking strange and being stupid. A confused Joe sees a magazine with the year 2505 printed on it. He thinks it's a misprint, but then the doctor's bill also has the same date. Joe begins asking about the date, when Doc notices that Joe doesn't have the tattoo, a kind of ID, which all people have on their hand. Joe looks outside the window and is shocked to finally see the landscape filled with chaos and realizes he slept for 500 years. Doc panics and presses the alarm. He is terrified in the confusion and doesn't reply. So Joe runs out of the hospital. Walking further, he sees more of the depressingly stupid condition of society. At night, he walks up to a food dispenser, where a woman is trying to get food, but there's a problem and she hits the machine. So it sprays her with a calming drug and she walks away. Joe approaches the machine, but the police find him and tackle Joe. He tries to explain but they mace him and take him to the court because of his crime. The trial is a complete circus and even his own defense lawyer, who's actually Frito from before, also turns on him. They all mock his strange behavior and appearance. The trial is swift after Frito also accuses him of breaking into his house. That seals Joe's fate and he's sent to the prison. Meanwhile, Rita is shown awake elsewhere. She tries making a phone call to Upgrade, but a horny man approaches her for her services. She sees a dumb look in the man's eye, so she tells him to wait till tomorrow, and also that she charges by the hour. He happily agrees to wait and pays her the money, which has become a funnier version of the dollar. Back in prison, Joe is being processed and getting his ID tattoo. He inserts his hand into a dirty hole, where the computer asks him for his name, but Joe says he's not sure. So the dumb machine literally names Joe as not sure on his ID. Next, he's taken over to the aptitude test area, where he sees people struggling with tasks which even a chimpanzee could do. While waiting in queue to enter the prison, a large inmate spots him and threatens to sit on him like the man he's currently sitting on. Joe is not stoked, so he comes up with a genius escape plan. He tells the security guard he's supposed to be getting out of prison today. The guard calls him a dumbass and tells him he's in the wrong line. Another guard at a counter scans his tattoo, but there is a problem, so Joe tells him to check the files and escapes from the prison with no resistance. Back at Frito's house, Joe enters and convinces him to keep quiet. Joe asks him whether a time machine exists. Frito says yes, and agrees to help him because Joe convinced him by promising billions of dollars. They hear the police at the door and escape from the back. Joe tells him they also need to find Rita on the way. Nearby, Rita is on the streets as usual. Turns out she's still charging the same man, and tells him to wait another day. Joe spots her and tells her to get inside the car and he'll explain everything. He tells her it's been 500 years since the experiment. Rita says she still owes upgrade, but Joe reminds her no human can live for 500 years. But she says if a time machine exists, he will come after her for the money. As they drive, a machine detects Joe and orders him to pull over. They keep driving, so the car shuts itself down. They exit the car and evade the police. Under Frito's lead, they continue walking to where the time machine is. Shortly after, they head into the biggest supermarket on the planet. They walk to a waiting area, and Frito says the shuttle will arrive soon. Rita goes to the toilet as they wait. The guys are talking. Frito says he wants to breed Rita if Joe's cool with it. But as Joe is stopping horny Frito from catching unwanted attention, another scanner picks up Joe's ID. They're about to leave in the shuttle when Frito and Joe get into a time travel discussion, but both just end up more confused. Soon the police surround Joe while Frito gets stuck in the departing shuttle. The police take Joe, while Rita spots him from afar. In the car, Joe says he'd rather die than go to that prison again, but gets pepper sprayed by a cop multiple times. The next day, he's taken to the White House. Turns out his test results were shocking and he's now the smartest man in the world. All the people there are members of the president's cabinet. As they're talking, a huge man walks in. He is Camacho, President of America. He is disappointed to see Joe has short hair, and says he looks like a peanut. They all go to a special event hosted by Camacho. In his own badass way, he expresses his sadness about the plants not growing, the pollution problem and more. Because they found Joe, who has the highest IQ in the world, Camacho says he will fix literally everything, and also says he will fix all the world's problems in just 1 week. He also promised that if Joe fails to do all this in 1 week, he will kick Joe's smart balls all the way up to his smart mouth, and put him in prison again. Later, Joe is riding on Camacho's bike, and finds out that if he fixes the problems, he will get a full presidential pardon. This makes Joe think about helping, and they both have a beer while Camacho flexes impressively. Back at the White House, Joe, now a member of the cabinet, is sitting and thinking with others when Frito appears, and Joe excuses himself to go and speak with Frito. Joe tells him he doesn't know enough to fix all the problems and expresses doubt. He asks Frito where exactly the time machine is, and Frito agrees to draw him a map. They return to the others and Joe asks to be shown the sit crops. At the farm, he is examining the crops and asks Frito to join him, who then hands Joe the map he promised. One of the guards tells Joe they found Rita and bring her to him. Rita is surprised to see Joe with all the people, and Joe asks her to walk with him. Away from the group, Joe tells Rita to make a run for it. When he takes out Frito's map, it's totally useless. So Joe tells her to run anyway and look for the time machine. She tells him it's no point as she already tried and found nothing. The guards come to them, and they walk back to others. While returning, they get sprinkled with green liquid. Joe takes a lick, and realizes the plants are being irrigated using Brondo, the thirst mutilator, instead of water. We see that this drink took over all drinking sources and had a full monopoly. And soon everyone stopped using water. Suddenly it hits Joe this is a problem he can actually solve, and it motivates him to not give up. Back at the White House, Joe explains to others why water is important, but they tell him Brondo has what plants crave. It's got electrolytes. After failing to get through to them, he just tells them he has the power to speak to plants. He said the plants told him they wanted water, and they believed him instantly. As Secretary of Interior, he ordered people to use water for the plants. At night in the White House, Joe and Rita are hoping it works. Joe expresses how he feels so strange being smarter than everyone else because he's not used to it. Rita thanks him for pardoning her crime because of which she is now free. As he lies on the floor she says it's fine if he sleeps on the bed next to her. But Joe says what would Upgrade think? Rita laughs as he still doesn't know her profession. Next morning, Joe looks outside, and sees an angry crowd because suddenly, Brando stock dropped to zero, which caused mass unemployment. The company's CEO says that everyone, including him, got fired by an automatic firing software. He asks why this is happening. Joe mentions that it might be due to them switching to water from Brando. Suddenly they catch up and turn on Joe. On the news, we see how Joe's new trial went. He was shown using his dumb smart talk to try and convince the jury, but it failed again, and he was sentenced to 1 night of rehabilitation. In Joe's mind it sounded great, but in this world, this is what 1 night of rehabilitation looks like. Next, we see Rita speaking to Joe in prison. He says he can't escape this time because they chained him to a massive rock. Kind of smart. He tells her to find the time machine and travel to the past. He asks her to tell the people, so this future is avoided. Also tells her to keep painting. Soon, a rock behind him is pushed down the stairs, and Joe goes with it. Back at the White House, Rita is packing her clothes, and Frito is there to drive her to the time machine. He sees the rehabilitation show on TV. In it, Joe is walking to the arena, where the opponents' cars are shown. It's 2 mega monster trucks with penetrative fittings. But Joe only gets a scrappy little car. As Joe drives it forward, he is booed and people throw all kinds of things at him. The announcer has another surprise for the crowd as he introduces one more truck. It is Beef Supreme, the legendary rehabilitation officer. But his truck is so big that it causes a part of the building to collapse as he exits and gets buried under the rubble. Rita sees plants growing from the window and asks Frito to drive her to the arena, so they can prove Joe's innocence. In the arena, one of the 2 remaining trucks begins charging at him and he barely survives. He tries catching his breath when the other one hits him. Rita reaches the president and shows him a plant saying it works, but he brushes her off. Below them, Joe is trying to evade the duo as they prepare for their signature double attack. But Joe is able to outsmart them and they both run into each other and explode. The crowd goes silent and everyone wonders if he won. Just then, the rubble begins to shake, and Beef Supreme emerges from it. Along with a flamethrower and grenade launcher. He raises his hands and accidentally burns a man, and the crowd goes wild as Joe tries to process all this. Rita has an idea. She goes to a cameraman and offers him money. Next she goes to the TV control room, where she sees Joe trying to survive in the arena as Beef fires grenades, which free Joe from the rock, and he manages to hide. Outside, Frito and the cameraman stop near the plants. But next to the plants, they see an adult coffee shop and completely forget why they came out here. Back inside, Joe manages to grab a hold of the mic and makes a final, heartwarming plea to the crowd, saying he genuinely knows the plants will grow with water. But they just laugh at him. Then Beef continues to try and rehabilitate Joe with fire, but he hangs to the mic where he can't be reached. Outside, the 2 guys exit the shop after having a good time. Frito tries reading a word, but the camera guy insults him because he's reading. This upsets Frito and he punches the guy, and the camera he's holding falls to the ground, while pointing at a plant nearby. Rita sees the plant too, and puts it on the arena's main screen. Frito spots the camera and realizes what he came out to do. He picks it and shows several healthy, green plants across the field. Everyone's attention is on the screen and Joe leaves the mic and falls to the ground where Beef is about to roast him. But Camacho saves Joe on time. Joe is pardoned and everyone cheers. Back at the White House, everyone is having a party. Joe thanks Rita because she saved his life, as nobody's done that much for him before. Rita says she's just glad he also helped her before. Frito is nearby when he spots the star of his favorite show, and kicks him in the balls out of love. Joe tells Rita he'll miss the people of this time, even though they tried to kill him, after he goes back to the past. Rita expresses that she has decided to not return. She had a life back there which she doesn't want to return to. Joe tells her to keep up the painting. As he's about to say goodbye, President Camacho calls him to the front for a special announcement. He decided to make Joe the vice president. Joe thanks him but says he can't do it, because he has to return home. The people ask, but who will fix all our problems? Joe tells him they'll just have to learn how to do it. Camacho tells him this is his opportunity to lead the people. Then Joe has a change of heart, and says forget about the time machine, and stays to help all the people as they cheer and joy. The boy tells him it's good he skipped the time machine because that ride sucks. In the next scene, Joe, Frito and Rita are sitting on a ride where Charlie Chaplin is the man who started World War II. Joe asks Frito if he always knew time machine was just a ride. Frito agrees and asks if Joe really believed he could time travel, and how that's a dumb idea. Joe agrees. Then we see how Joe soon became the President of America, and honors Camacho for his support. He gives an inspiring speech about the great pastimes, and how it can be cool to be smart. People love his speech and fully support his desire to make people smarter. Rita and Joe eventually married and had the smartest children in the world. While Frito became the vice president and had 32 of the dumbest kids ever. Rita becomes a proper artist. And so, humanity once again had a ray of intelligent hope for the future. And our story ends with a better world. I hope you enjoyed this recap. Please like, share, and subscribe to show support. Thank you. And see you in the next one.